Imagine you're all alone in a bathtub. Unless you're a professional redditor, that should be very scary. Now an ocean, or even a lake for that matter. Any body of water where you can't see below you. That's a bit scarier, right? But why is that? Water itself is inherently scary, nor is the ocean. Yet, it works so well within horror games. Well, that's because the vastness of the ocean can easily be used to create feelings of isolation and helplessness. You see nothing and no one around you, yet you don't know for certain that you're alone. While this can't be completely replicated without throwing yourself in the middle of the ocean, I think some video games can come pretty close. Subnautica. In case you aren't already familiar with it, go play it. It's an amazing game. But if you're determined to deprive yourself, Subnautica is a survival adventure game set on a planet dominated by the ocean. While the game doesn't focus on horror alone, I can safely say it's still one of the scariest games that I've ever played. You crash land in this ocean, completely alone. Any attempts to find other survivors are met by nothing but destruction and disappointment. Voice logs give you hope, only to wrench it away from your grasp minutes later. But there's one portion that I want to talk about the most, and that's the first exploration of the Aurora. Luckily, during the crash, the ship seems to have remained mostly, or rather, somewhat intact. You are prompted to make a radiation suit and explore what remains of the spacefaring vessel. But this is where the first real scare of Subnautica comes into play. The water is brown, murky, and hard to see in. The elevation dips sharply and becomes barren and empty. You are alone, not quite unlike the scenario proposed at the beginning. You scan all around, your head on a swivel, and then you hear it. It spotted you, likely before you've spotted it, if you didn't come prepared. The sea moth that you used to protect yourself from threats up until now is rendered utterly useless, crushed between the jaws of the Reaper Leviathan. It's this desolate environment that creates a perfect storm for the first scare. Even if you do escape unscathed, it completely shifts the tone of the game. From this point onward, any new exploration is accompanied by a feeling of intense dread, stemming from the fact that you really don't know what lies in the depths of these oceans. If you go against every thought in your mind telling you to turn back, and instead decide to go around the back of the Aurora, and continue to venture even further, you are met with something much worse. The murky water is now replaced with pitch black nothingness, and the ground completely disappears beneath your feet, instead of just dipping down. Your PDA warns you that you are entering an ecological dead zone, but something is still very much alive there. You are being pursued by something much scarier than before. Your only light in the darkness is the very thing that wants to kill you. But that's just one way the ocean can be used in video games. Another type of underwater horror I'd like to touch on is what I'd like to call submarine horror. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the game must take place in a submarine, but rather that the water serves as a barrier keeping the player inside or on something. They often invoke a feeling of being alone by constraints of the playable area, rather than the vastness of the ocean. Think Bioshock or Iron Lung, something like Alien Isolation, but, underwater. But the one I wanted to talk about is called Soma. Soma is a horror game set on Pathos 2, a collection of underwater facilities at the bottom of the ocean. In order to give this game the praise it deserves, I need to venture into heavy spoiler territory. So, you have been warned. Throughout the game, you are met with heavy feelings of isolation. Following the opening scene, Simon, our player character, is thrust into an unfamiliar environment with no indication of where to go. Exploring will reveal no people, but rather robots, mostly in disrepair, speaking in human voices. You are the only human, at least that's still alive. Trapped in these tight, claustrophobic corridors, it is only you, robots, and the monsters chasing you down. That's at least until you meet Catherine. She helps guide you along, leading you to her through the watery expanse separating the facilities. But when you finally reach her, you come to the realization that she's not human, but a robot as well. This is immediately followed by the revelation that the diving suit that you're in is in fact your body, and that you aren't alive either. As it turns out, the doctor that you went to in the opening scene had copied your brain and saved it for further research. That further research culminated in you being revived into a new body and tossed into these harrowing circumstances. This same research led to the pre-robot Catherine to create a device called the Ark. The Ark serves as a continuation of their minds, a place where they can continue to live on for thousands of years, when intended to be launched into space. However, this never happened, significantly reducing its predicted life expectancy. I can't imagine why. So, you load up Catherine into your trusty Omnitool and bring her along to go save the Ark, and upload your consciousness into it while you're at it. I really enjoyed this choice because limiting Catherine to the Omnitool renders her unable to talk to you when she's not hooked up to a computer, which gives us those silent, isolated moments out in the ocean and intense, silent chases, while still giving Simon someone to bounce off of, expanding him as a character. Another decision I really enjoyed was that looking at the monsters generally penalizes the player. If there's one gripe I have with the game, it's that the monster designs aren't too scary. They look good, they fit the theme, but I personally just don't find some of them scary. Just look at them. They're silly little guys. So, by discouraging the player to look at the monster, they keep the tension of being chased, while not bringing too much attention to the design. But I digress. What does all this have to do with the ocean? Well, as the game continues to explore the themes of what makes a person a person, and tries to create a feeling of isolation, it becomes obvious how much the setting leads to this. When you get the chance to look into the ocean, and down into the abyss, you realize that there is nowhere to go. There is no escape from the monsters that will hunt you down. There is no future to look forward to, no hope to find others, which makes the choices you are forced to make even more difficult. At certain points in the game, you will be given options as to what actions to take. For example, in order to enter the abyss, which has extremely high pressure, you decide to transport your consciousness into a new body. Unbeknownst to Simon, this is not possible, and results in simply copying his consciousness over, meaning we are left with two Simons, leaving our original Simon knocked out. Thus, we are given a choice. We can either leave the original Simon to fend for himself, alone, with a monster right outside the door and no hope of escape from the depths of the ocean. Or, we can kill him, and he won't even know what happened. At another point, you come across the real, only surviving human. Not just in the facility, but on Earth. You see, at this point, Simon has learned that Pathos 2 is the only remaining bastion of human civilization following the impact of a comet on Earth. And here is humanity's last hope, hooked up to life support, along with humanity's other last hope, the Ark. Upon giving Simon the Ark, she makes a simple request of him, to end her life. At this point, Simon has possibly killed the consciousness of several people, so the player must decide whether the decision weighs the same as the others, if they should kill a real human and what a real human really is. If you decide to leave her alive, she will inevitably die, because once again, you're at the bottom of the ocean. No matter the choice you make, you end up in the same place, in the dark depths of the abyss, launching the Ark into space as the savior of humanity. As Simon uploads his consciousness into the Ark and breathes a sigh of relief, he's left with a burning question that leads to the greatest scene in the entire game. Why is he still here? He should be on the Ark. He screams at Catherine, demanding an answer, but deep down, he already knows what she's going to say. He's already seen it happen before, with the previous Simon that we left behind, when we switched into the new suit, except this time, he's the one left behind. As the screen breaks and we lose communication with Catherine, and we watch as the darkness of the ocean abyss closes around on us, Simon says one last thing.
Catherine? Please don't leave me alone. Catherine? Catherine?
And then the credits roll. That's it. At least for this Simon. Because we're met with another bittersweet ending from the point of view of the Simon on the Ark. The one never met with the harsh reality And the game ends with a shot aimed at the ocean, because, after all the terror it's dragged us through, it's still the origin of life and a new hope for humanity. If you managed to sit through all my yapping, I'd appreciate if you would subscribe, and I'll see you next time.